I'm Jack and welcome to Jack Bell's Underwater Photography. Today's session is going to be focused on patience, and what I'm going to talk about today is portraits of fishtails, understanding locations, subject behaviour, and finally key tips. So, you've got your camera, you're dying to take a photo, and you're taking a photo, click, 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 of absolutely everything that moves. And quite often, I see a lot of people underwater chasing after fish and other critters, and guess what? These things never cooperate, and you end up with lots of photos like this. You can see the fishtail, and you see a lot of blue colours because the fish doesn't want to be eaten or chased. It's scared of you because you're chasing it, so not a great result. If you were to look at a portrait of a person, the equivalent portrait, something like this, not what you're trying to get really, is it? What you really want to achieve is something like this, where you get a nice picture from the front, and you can use your creativity however you so desire. So if you translate that into the underwater world, you want a nice fish portrait, maybe get the glint in the eye as well from the strobe. So the first thing to do is, when you arrive at a new destination, is maybe talk to some of your guides. Find out who your guide is. Find out what's special. And a lot of places there is a certain amount of seasonality. So critters, for instance, like to be there when the water's cold. Other special things like cardinal fish with eggs in the mouth, or jawfish with the eggs in the mouth, maybe only occur at certain times. So make friends with your guide. Find out what's special then when you're there. Also, what are the conditions going to be like? Is the water really clear? Maybe there's been a lot of rain and the visibility is really poor. Or maybe there are lots of waves at the dive sites stirring up the sand, meaning that you've got a chance of getting a lot of backscatter. So that may determine what your approach is going to be. Also, what is their dive plan? What sort of dive sites are they going to take you to? And then if you've got some simple tide tables for the area, you can see what to expect in terms of currents and maybe weather conditions. Communicate and become friends with your dive guide. If you're going to be taking a few snaps with a small camera, so you're going to take a photo or maybe 2 or 3 photos and then move on, and for a few of the photographers that's okay. If you've got one of these beasts and you want to take a perfect photo for a future competition, you better let your guide know that ahead of time, so that they can make allowances for you. Also, how are you going to find out where the dive group is? Maybe you need to listen extra carefully to the dive briefing and find out where they're going so you can catch up with them. Better still, have a friendly buddy that's going to be your eyes and ears underwater, and they can keep an eye on where everybody's going and help you out. So one of the key things with underwater photography is understanding subject behaviour. By looking at a fish or a critter, maybe you can see how they're moving. For instance, cardinal fish are really good at this, a good example. So if you spot a cardinal fish, or your guide spots a cardinal fish and shows you that they've got eggs in the mouth, if you start to approach them with your camera, maybe they're going to swim away. So the first thing to do will be to stop and watch what's going on. If there's some sand that's been stirred up, maybe by a previous photographer or a previous diver or by the guide themselves, then let the sand settle whilst you look and observe what's going on. And also that has the advantage that that's going to let the critter or the fish get used to your presence. Then maybe you approach slowly. Take a photo so they see your strobe, your flash fire. Maybe take a few more photos as you approach. One of the things I quite often like to do is, if I'm taking a photo like this of a critter, then maybe I'll move the camera out. I don't really care what the quality is necessary at this point. I'm just trying to get the critter used to my presence. And by moving the camera, it's frequently less threatening to them. So they get used to you there, they get used to the camera there, and they get used to the strobes firing. Take your time. Don't rush. Rushing after fish and rushing after critters only make them think that you're trying to eat it, and so they're not going to cooperate with you for your photos. If your subject is really spooked, try and look somewhere else. Maybe there's another critter that hasn't been subject of many photos already, or maybe it's a bit more relaxed in the location it's at, and you'll be lucky. Or try later on. Maybe your subject is spooked because there's been another predator chasing at it. So if you're patient, maybe you watch your fish swimming and it likes to hide in a little overhang. Maybe that gives you another opportunity to take a photo when it's slightly more relaxed. I found this location where a cardinal fish was swimming, so they would come out of the bommy and swim around, and then if they saw something big, they just swam under the overhang. So I was able to get my camera in there and take a few shots. So here's the shots of the cardinal fish with their eggs in the mouth. And these were all taken in the overhang, where it's much easier to take the photos. After you've finished taking a photo of the subject and you're moving on, I suggest you reset your settings to something neutral. Just in case you see a great subject and you want to take a quick photo, you're in position then to take at least have a usable photo before it disappears off, if that's the case. For posting, how often do you see something on Facebook, you see 4 photos, and then you see a 5th photos with a plus 10 million or loads of photos in there? So that really is off-putting when you see that, and I'm not sure how many people really go into the albums in depth unless there's a special reason to do that. So my suggestion is, if you're going to post your photos, leave it for a few days. One of the key problems is you're really excited, you want to share your photos with the world, and you'll post straight away, you'll post loads of photos, and then you look at them a few days later and you think, crikey, well, I don't like that one, this one's not very good. So a few days later, you're actually going to see what's in the photo, whereas if you do it straight after the dive, you're going to see what you maybe saw in the dive, or you wanted to see, or you're still excited and pumped from the dive. So perhaps leave the processing, or leave the selection of the photos for posting. A week is a really good time. Then you're going to be far more objective about which photos you're going to post. And that's important for sites like Facebook, but also Instagram, Flickr, and other more photography-oriented sites. What I suggest is you also limit how many photos you see in the album. So it's not just the 5, maybe limit yourself to 1 or 2 or 3. That way you're only going to be selecting your best photos. So if you're selecting photos from a few dives, then maybe 3 or 4. Try and just post 1 photo per dive. That way they'll be more special. What you want to guard against really is viewer fatigue. People see lots of photos of fish and other critters, underwater photos. They may be special to you, they're not so special to other people that have seen hundreds or even thousands of similar photos. So, what are the key tips? Don't chase your subjects, be patient, let them come to you, learn their behaviours, see where they're swimming, and maybe there's a better opportunity to take the photo you really want. Whilst you're observing, let the sand settle. That's much better for reducing backscatter than having all the sand stirred up and trying to take a photo of what looks like a snowstorm. One other thing that you might try and do is look for the subject's food. So sometimes nudibranches like a specific type of food. So if you're trying to find a nudibranch, look for the food and maybe you find a nudibranch there. The bonus is if they're eating, they're going to be focused on that and not on you, the photographer. For fish, a good place is a cleaning spot. So there are lots of shrimps around the reef that give a nice cleaning service to the fish or other critters. So if you find that place, be patient again, approach slowly, and maybe you'll be rewarded by bigger fish that just swim by to be cleaned. But again, don't rush in there and take the photo of the grouper just because you've just spotted there. It's just going to swim away and that's going to be another fishtail photo. And also the hiding spots. If it's easy to film in an overhang, then maybe you can get your camera in there and take a really nice photo. So, just to finish off with, remember, photography is not a spectator sport. See you next time.